jump right into it, man. No introduction, no foreplay, baby. Right into it. What's up? What's good? Okay, I already recorded these, so I don't need these anymore. Okay, yeah, let's jump right into today. Right, USD CAD, right, was bullish, right, bullish, and then started selling off yesterday, right, as a pullback, came into this 4 hour zone here, and then come London, it started to push up a little bit, right, not sustained, and then pushed down. So this here is not actually a trade. I put this here as, remember we're testing out this new entry criteria, right? And then I was talking about market context, right? What is the context of the market before I take on something like that, right? I do want to look at what is the context. Alright, so cool. Let's look at the context, right? We have the M15 swing being bullish, right? We have a pullback, and we have the internal being bearish, right? This is all internal structure moving bearish like this, and then right, we're moving bearish. This was not a valid IPOS, I'd say, right, just above, so not a valid IPOS. Now here the entry model presents itself, right? This was like the previous daily low, right? So sweep of liquidity of the previous daily low plus the Asian liquidity there, right? And then you have a chart there with good market context. This is a trade, right? Good market context, keep that in mind. So what do I mean by that? Okay, M15 is in the pullback phase, right? It's mitigating a 4 hour zone, it's mitigating a 15-minute zone. So surely this could be the start of the pullback. Not the pullback, the next swing round. But no, I don't take this, right? I do not take this because even though this happened, my internal is still bearish, right? My internal is still bearish, so obviously we do want to follow internal, and this here is not the extreme of the M15 swing, right, or the M15 internal. So this entry criteria, I noticed it works way better, like seriously way better, if it's used on the extreme, like here for example, right, on this 1 hour zone. This 1 hour zone is the final zone that needs to hold if the M15 swing is going to continue being bullish, right? It's the final zone to hold. So how many times are you going to execute on this type of idea, right? All in here, right? In here, on this liquidity here, and then finally on the final zone that needs to hold, right? You're going to lose many times before you reach the final zone that needs to hold. Now in here, you're only taking one risk, right? Only one risk, which is the final zone, right? That's the only risk you're taking. The final zone that needs to hold is this one, right? So you're taking the risk within there, even though you're against the internal. Even though you're against the internal, this is the final zone that needs to hold. So the context behind the market is a little bit better on this one. And today we had FOMC, as you can see, with the huge sell-off here, FOMC. So obviously the market was, not obviously, but most of the time it doesn't really make large moves before like the news, because like the market is, not the market, but participants are most likely sat on their hands waiting for direction, right? Direction, which now is US holds the interest rate steady, and then the reaction is for the US dollar to fall. All right, so that is part of the reason why this also is not a good idea today, because of that there's news coming out later that possibly could move the market in any direction. So this it makes like this setup lower probability, because also had this been here, you can take the chance, right? Because even though with news you technically don't want to be in trades during news, right? Because you're more likely to like lose the trade than make a profit. So yeah, I didn't take this. Like I said, this one has a little bit more discretion to it, because I need to decide if I feel this is good versus this, right? It's not like normally where it's more mechanical, but I think it's okay, because with my experience, I think I can do okay with the discretion. So yeah, I did not take that, and now we have a M50 bus right there, 15-minute bus, which means now we have USD CAD being bearish on the M15. On the 4-hour reacted there, so could we see more of a push down, maybe a pullback into here? I don't know if you can see, maybe a pullback into here and then more push down. We'll see what happens tomorrow. And then GPUSD, I was looking for buys in here, definitely was looking for buys. When I came in this morning, that's my internal one, 15 IBOS there, which then makes this the internal low. So anyway, coming in this morning, this is the pattern I was looking at. The IBOS, the previous IBOS was here, right? Previous IBOS was here, making this the internal low, right? New IBOS is there. Makes sense. So coming in, I was looking at this pattern, right? This pattern was derived from here, where I see the market coming down, right? Comes down, the nearest high is that one. So this is a high that creates the low, right? Break in this was the IBOS there, and then another IBOS there, which means the market moves up, and the market moves coming into this morning, the market was here. So my expectation was for this to buy, right? Look at this, we come into a 4-hour zone, and then we print a familiar pattern, right? This head and shoulder pattern. More importantly, with this IBOS is the most important part of this pattern. Like, you need to have an IBOS here, 15-minute IBOS. You need this. This is like the bread and butter of the setup, right? Where you have the IBOS, and then now you're looking to buy from in here, right? But then I didn't have a good place to look for buys, right? I was looking for buys come into today. This was yesterday, right? Moved down. I was looking for buys, not interested in anything over here. Not interested in anything over here because this failed to make a new high, right? So it kind of made me not interested in anything down here because this failed. So what I was looking for earlier was a break, right? This IBOS that had ended up happening here, and then I would have followed this movement higher, but today I didn't get that. And then with FOMC, we have it moving crazy, going to the upside, which now means the chronicles of being trapped in the fucking range continue, right? We'll see what happens with the 4-hour internal. If you do get an internal break higher, then start looking for buys again. If not, I don't know, we'll see. I am going to introduce new pairs, like I said, by the end of the week. I think 2 new pairs, maybe GBP, Euro GBP, and DAX German 40, right? I think I'll introduce those two because yeah, some of these are just moving kind of sideways. Even though there's opportunities, they are moving kind of sideways. So introducing two more pairs, I think, will not be too bad in terms of workload, manageable workload plus more opportunity. Right, I think that will give a good balance. Euro USD really wasn't looking at anything in here, man. There was something in here, right? There were cells in here with this IPOS M15 whatever in here looking for cells, but man, iffy, iffy stuff. Not interested in the iffy stuff in the middle of nowhere as well, where the swing low was holding. Right, remember when I said when the swing low holds, even though this was heavily bearish, I'm not actually looking for sells because we're coming into the swing low. The swing low is showing no signs of breaking, so why would I continue looking for sells trying to break the swing low? It makes no sense. And then yeah, now we just went back to the top of the range. So yeah, just swept the lows of the range. Now we go back higher and then we start looking for sells again at the highest. Or maybe this time we'll actually get a better movement higher. So for now it's just iffy on Euro USD. It's okay. This is the type of price action you have to survive, right? And then most importantly, show up for the great price action. And yeah, I think that's about it for today. We'll check back in tomorrow, right? And take it from there. Peace.